Hey everyone, let's continue on our journey. Today we're going to talk about dinosaurs turning into birds and worms growing legs. The idea that dinosaurs evolved into birds is pretty much accepted by almost every secular scientist and most people. Have you seen any of the Jurassic Park movies? Anybody? Go ahead, raise your hand. Let me take a look, see who's out there. Wow, that's a lot of you guys. What in the world are you doing watching that evolutionary New Age filled movie? I thought I had a bunch of Christians here. What are you guys doing watching that stuff? Now, I just happened to watch it, but it was for research purposes only. There was no enjoyment. Hey, if I'm gonna teach this class, man, I gotta know what's going on there so that I can teach you better, right? All right. I'm messing with you. I actually love dinosaur movies and science fiction. But I know that these are movies, and they're being used to teach a generation how to think. One of the primary messages in Jurassic Park is that the dinosaurs are still here. They just evolved into the birds. Well, let's deal with that claim. First, let me take you to the Cincinnati Zoo. There they have an exhibit called Wings of the World. You can't believe the video that they're showing there, so I want to show it to you how the dinosaur evolved into the birds. Now watch. That was my tribute to Bill Nye. You got that right. The dinosaurs evolved into the birds because a dinosaur ran and it ran and it ran. And over time, the legs shrank and its arms grew. Seriously? Let me illustrate that claim for you, please, okay? Ladies, cover your ears up for a second. I gotta talk to the gentlemen. Young men, listen up. I know, when you're young, it's really difficult. One of the biggest challenges is finding a young lady. I know. I'm here to help though, okay? I'm old now and it doesn't matter anymore, but I've learned a lot over the years. If you want the ladies to pay attention to you, I've got the answer. Work out and get the guns. Ladies love the guns, man, I'm just telling you, okay? And this is where I can really help. I've learned a secret to getting the guns. All you have to do is take up cross country. That's right. Yeah, see, as you run cross country, your legs shrink and your arms grow and you get great guns. You laugh. Well, that's what that video just depicted. We didn't even talk about the fact that a bird lung is totally different from a reptile lung and that a bird bone is different from a reptile bone. There's nothing similar. And what about the bird's feathers? Supposedly the reptilian scale, which is a fold in the skin, got roughed up over time and turned into a feather? We're gonna come back to that, believe me. But before we do, let's take a look at the big picture and let's work our way down from there. Take a look at this. It's a pretty popular picture depicting the path to birds. It's a secular picture. There you go, it must be true. We have a complete sequence of a reptile turning into a bird. Let me show you some other images to depict those ancestors. It's assignment time. Yes, my dream has come true. I'm a teacher and I get to give my first assignment. This is so awesome. You get to become beef inspectors. Hey, maybe we'll even have like badges made up that says beef, never mind, forget about it. Because I'm a nice teacher though, I'm going to help you. I've dug around and found the other names of the animals that aren't listed on this chart. That way you don't have to go do that, okay? I'm nice, see? Here's your assignment. You have to research each of the 8 animals that are depicted here and give me 2 pieces of information. First is a picture of the actual fossil evidence that this image was made from. And secondly, how old are each one of these ancestors, supposedly, according to the evolutionary timescale? You're going to research that and we'll talk about it in the next class. But for this lesson, let's look at another ancestor that they didn't mention in the chart. Please welcome Proto-Avis to the class. To discuss Proto-Avis, we'll look at the article, Questions About the World's Oldest Bird from Discover Magazine. In the article, we can see what the men who discovered the fossil thinks. His name is Dr. Sankar Chatterjee. If you've not read the article, please stop here and go read it before proceeding. Thanks. Are you back? Good. Let's keep going and remember the Discover magazine is not a Christian publication. They're very pro-evolution. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the two worldviews and see what they teach on the origin of birds. The first is the biblical worldview. And according to God's Word, the only one who's always been there, who knows everything, it's a historical account that we have in the Word. God said He created the birds on day 5 of Creation Week. Chapter 3 in Creation Basics and Beyond, that's going to help you understand that the days in Genesis are actual days and not long periods of time, as some people like to say. If the historical account is true, the evidence we find should support the premise that birds have always been birds, and that's what I think you're going to see. Now, secular history says, according to the evolutionary model, slowly, gradually, over millions of years, a small dinosaur was running and they eventually turned into birds. If this account is true, the evidence should show a variety of animals slowly, gradually turning from a dinosaur into a bird. Here's an important point to understand. How you interpret evidence is based in large part on what you already believe. Those two worldviews will impact your interpretation of science, the meaning of life, pretty much everything. Let me flesh that out for you just a little more. Let's take a look at the artwork they have for the fossil evidence in Discover magazine. And here's another picture. Pretty convincing, right? I mean, it's not fully bird, it's not reptile, it's got a little bit of both in there. It's a transitional fossil. So what are we going to do? Why is this pile of bones so controversial? It's quite simple. Because of their supposed age. According to Dr. Chatterjee, these bones date back 225 million years. Do you see the problem with this? Take a look at the path the birds chart again. Now do you see it? Proto-Avis, which according to Dr. Chatterjee is more bird-like than Archaeopteryx, has long been considered one of, if not the first bird. Proto-Avis predates even the dinosaurs that were supposedly on their way to becoming a bird. That's not possible. Houston, we have a problem. By the way, it gets even worse. Let's take a look at the bones again from Discover magazine. I'm only showing you a picture of the artwork here. Let me fill in the rest of the images as we go along. The evidence is the pile of bones. They gave the pile of bones to 5 different scientists to explain what it is. One scientist says it's a bird. Another scientist says it's a transitional fossil between the dinosaurs and the birds. And still other scientists say that it's a reptile, and another guy says it's a dinosaur. Think about it for a second. Do we have a problem with the evidence? No. The evidence is a pile of bones. Where do we have the problem? With the interpretation of the evidence. Remember, your worldview will impact your interpretation. Speaking of interpretation, take a look at these 3 ancestors to the birds. I thought about giving another assignment, but I don't want to be mean to you, so we'll just do this together. Please put them in sequence from oldest to youngest, left to right. Now, let me see if you've got it right. This is a self-graded test, so be honest. What's the correct sequence? Oldest to youngest. A, 1, 2, 3. B, 3, 2, 1. C, 2, 1, 3. D, 2, 3, 1. Or E, none of the above. And the answer is E, none of the above. And the reason is because every one of those images supposedly depicts Archaeopteryx. Why do the images look so different? Because of the worldview of the person that's making the construction of the bones. A number of critics consider his bones to be a hopeless mess of fragments that doesn't even come close to supporting his claim to the oldest bird. These critics also attack Chatterjee's professional conduct. Only in the past year has he begun to publish his results, and only in piecemeal form at that. Considering all of the attention he garnered in 1986, it perplexes people that Chatterjee took so long. His more vocal critics say his work is misleading and incapable of supporting the headlines. Wow, that's not some creationist with a bone to pick attacking Dr. Chatterjee. Those are his peers. Let's now come back to the scale turning into a feather. See, I didn't forget about that. Supposedly over millions of years, the reptilian scale, which is a fold in the skin, gets roughed up and eventually turns into a feather. The evidence obviously supports that, right? Take a look at what secular scientists tell us about these two structures. According to Dr. Alfred Romer, although these structures seem quite different from the horny scales that cover a reptile's body, the difference is in reality not very great. According to the Encyclopedia Encarta, feather anatomy, Horny outgrowth of skin peculiar to the bird, but similar in structure and origin to the scales of fish and reptiles. I think by now you know what we need to do. We want you to be beef inspectors. Let's take a look at the actual evidence so you can see just how similar these two structures are. This is a scale. As you can see, a reptilian scale is a fold in the skin. Let's turn it over. Now let's compare that with a feather. Sorry, I went too quickly, didn't I? Let me do it again. Slower so that you can see the difference between the two structures. Scale, feather. Are you kidding me? These things aren't similar at all. They couldn't be any more different if you tried to make them more opposite. Remember, a reptilian scale is a fold in the skin. A feather is a complex structure growing out of the body, more like a hair. And talk about complex. Think about this, gentlemen. Have you ever had shaving bumps on your neck? I mean, it's not good, right? You got to get a needle and pull those little ingrown hairs out. Gross, I know, I get it. Well, it's worse for a chicken. Just think about a chicken with an ingrown feather. It's not a pretty sight. Do you know why chickens, for the most part, don't get ingrown feathers? Good question. Thanks for asking. That's because over millions of years, as the scale got roughed up and gradually turned into a feather, it developed a shell around the feather beneath the skin. So the feather develops inside the shell and it doesn't open underneath the skin. That's amazing what time and chance can do. Wow, that's great. There's only one problem, and that's the shell grows with the feather. You see the problem, right? The shell grows with the feather. You don't get it. Think about this. If the shell grows with the feather can never open up and you can't fly with porcupine quills. Do you know what I'm saying? So how does the bird get rid of the shell? Another great question, thanks for asking again. Over millions of years of random chance processes, the bird started to produce an enzyme right at the skin level that eats the shell so the feather can come up and open up and the bird can fly. It's so easy. It gets even worse. Let's magnify the Lord by looking even closer at the feather. By the way, have you ever heard the saying, the devil is in the detail? I beg to differ. God is in the detail. When you look at anything that man has made under an electron microscope, I don't care if it's the sharpest needle on the planet or the finest gear in a Swiss watch, it looks like junk. But when you look at what God has made under an electron microscope, the heavens declare the glory of God. A feather is the original Velcro. Man didn't invent it, God did. We just copied his design. Can you see how on each barb there are barbules? And on the barbules there are hooks, and they fit exactly into the eyelets so that the feather forms a single unit, making it strong enough yet light enough for the bird to fly. This is unbelievably designed. Another interesting point is, how do birds evolve feathers in the first place? Well, there are two possible explanations. The first says from the ground up, the second is from trees down. My good friend, Dr. David Minton, does a fantastic talk on bird feathers that you really should watch. Let me show you just a clip from it. Here he addresses the claim that dinosaurs evolved from the ground up. In this scenario, feathered dinosaurs used their wings to keep bugs in front of them so that they could catch them and eat them. Take a look at what Dr. Minton has to say.
I took a piece of tissue paper and tied it to a thread from a rafter in my basement. And then I put on the styrofoam wings. And I snuck up on the tissue paper. And I took my wings and I did that. Do you have any idea what happened? I mean, I can't believe this. This piece of tissue paper, not a speck of life in it, and it flew away.
Maybe that whole shooing bugs in front of you with your wings just doesn't quite work. It's not a very smart idea. What's the truth? What is similar between birds and dinosaurs? Well, let me take you back to Dr. Minton and let him tell you.
They are totally different. Their mature structure is dissimilar, their function is dissimilar, their embryological development is dissimilar, their mechanism of growth is dissimilar, their mechanism of replacement is dissimilar, their chemical composition is dissimilar.
Maybe, just maybe, the evidence is more consistent with what God tells us in His Word when He tells us that on day 5 He created birds. What do you think? But Carl, everybody knows that dinosaurs had feathers. We see it on National Geographic and TV and movies and almost every other medium that you can find. It has to be true. Well, let's inspect some beef again. Let's go to National Geographic where we can see Deinonychus with feathers. In addition, they found a new fossil called Archaeoraptor, and look at what they had to say about it. We can now say that birds are theropods just as confidently as we can say that humans are mammals. We even have a picture of baby T-Rex with downy feathers. It's so cute, I want one. Take a look at the claim that is made. It's a missing link between terrestrial dinosaurs and birds that could actually fly. There's only one problem. The evidence that was used to support those claims was fraudulent. The people who found the bones doctored them to make them look better, and then they sold them to the paleontologists who used them to support the beliefs that dinosaurs evolved into the birds. Listen to what was discovered with further investigation of the fossil evidence. Archaeoraptor represents 2 or more species in that it was assembled from at least 2 and possibly 5 separate specimens. Additional work in China verified that the tail is from an entirely different specimen, which has been described previously as a new species of dromaeosaur. Sadly, parts of at least 2 significant new specimens were combined in favor of the higher commercial value of the forgery. But Carl, what about Deinonychus with feathers? That has to be true. We see the image all over the place. Well, our time's up. So we'll have to address that in the next class. If at all possible, make sure to read those supplemental articles. I think you're going to find them very helpful. Remember, come prepared with your findings on the Path to Birds chart next time. Until then, stay bold.